Horikoshi, you man of many tricks. Before I hop into this discussion on the stagnant state of Midoriya's character, please do me a favor and leave your own thoughts on Midoriya's character in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Now, let's get into it. What's up guys, I got Pencil here, and here we are to discuss Midoriya, the stagnant character, and how I think Horikoshi sort of manipulated him in a very interesting way. So, let's get right into it. Notably, if you've been around on this channel for a while or have heard any of my complaints about Midoriya, it's usually the fact that he stays the same, regardless of the situation. I had big problems with this when he said he wanted to save Shigaraki. I had big problems with this all the way back when he fought Muscular. I had big problems with this just in general. However, I do completely understand the nature of Midoriya's character. However, what I have been seeing is a lot of claims that Midoriya has developed, that he's changed. And while I do agree with that on the idea of confidence in how he portrays himself and carries himself, I do not believe that applies to him as a character. Midoriya is the same character from chapter 1. 319 chapters later. And I know that seems like a bold claim to make. Obviously, Midoriya seems a lot more sad, a lot more real, a lot more human, if you will. And that does not mean his character has changed. It doesn't mean his ideology has changed. It doesn't mean Midoriya has changed as a character. It just means that his scenery has changed, and how he's made to react to the world and how the world reacts to him has changed. Because Midoriya is still the person who will sacrifice his body, mind, and spirit for someone else that he barely knows, someone else that he doesn't have any real connection with. We see that with how he protects these civilians regardless of how he's doing, and works to protect his friends just as he protected Bakugo all the way back in chapter 1. Regardless of what seems to be, Midoriya hasn't truly changed. It's just, like I said, the scenery. And I think that's because Midoriya is now in a real world kind of scenario. He is no longer being coddled by UA. There's no backup plan. There's nothing to fall to, because now we are sort of in the endgame. There's nothing to protect Midoriya from any of the massive threats that come towards him other than Midoriya himself. He is currently the strongest being to exist, at least out of his own group. And I think that's the big dynamic shift that happened before. In the beginning, Midoriya was the weakest person, but that didn't matter because he had enough luck and he had enough support and he had enough people to save him in the back that he was allowed to keep up his own heroic mentality regardless of the situation. He always had someone to fall back on, whether it be All Might, whether it be his fellow students, or whether it be his teachers. Someone was always there to catch Midoriya, and thus his character was allowed to flourish. It was allowed to stay the same. It was allowed to essentially remain unchanged for over 300 chapters. He's still the same kid. And I think that's the interesting trick that Horikoshi has pulled off in terms of writing Midoriya's character, because he has not changed Midoriya at all. He's taken away a lot of the cushion that Midoriya had behind him. So instead of his heroic destroy myself mindset just bouncing against the cushion and standing back up like it always did in the past, now there's no cushion there. He's sort of just falling through the ground. He's slamming himself into the earth over and over again, except he has no one to push him back up. And I think that is what makes Midoriya a lot more interesting now compared to a situation. I think that's where the human sides of Midoriya are starting to reveal themselves, because Midoriya, for the longest time, when he had the cushion there, when he had the things to bounce him back, was much more of a symbol type character, someone who had like very little, very rare human reactions to things. And I'd say there's no bigger peak than that, than his decision to try and save Shigaraki. Now, notably, if I were to put you in Midoriya's position and I asked you, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you have met someone who has thoughtlessly murdered thousands of people in one fell swoop, who will attempt to murder you the moment he comes upon your very being and plans to take down everything you know and love? What would you do? Would you declare that you are going to save that person? Would you declare that you are going to try and help that person? Would you declare that you will do the best you can to be the hero that they need? Personally, I'll be honest, I wouldn't. And I believe that this sort of mentality is what made Midoriya the character that Midoriya is to this day. And I think that's why so many people enjoy and love Midoriya for the character that he is. No matter what the situation is, no matter what the world is, no matter what the world has to say, he will be the hero in the darkness that no human could ever be. And while that is respectable, I don't think it's very realistic. And what I like that Horikoshi has decided to do with this arc is stop pushing the physical barriers and start pushing on the mental barriers. The cushion that I was referring to earlier in the video is not just the physical cushion of other people being there to help Midoriya and save Midoriya, but it was especially the mental cushion that was applied by all the people at UA and all the people he had connected with over the time he had at UA. He always had something to return to. He always had something to take his mind off of things. And at best, these moments that Midoriya would have to think, to have to get angry, to have to deal with something so dark and treacherous as villainy, he would only have it in short bursts. After every single arc, whether it be the Stain arc, the Overhaul arc, the Muscular arc, all these different fights he had, all these different villains he's fought, they've been short, quick, executed in a much more expedient fashion than one would expect. And thusly, right afterwards, Midoriya will return to the safety of UA. He would have his friends, he would have his people, he would have his family, and they would always recharge him and bring him right back. But now, in a world where a boy born of the ideas of All Might, literally taking his power, is forced to become All Might, it's interesting to see how the humanity of a person that has no cushion, that has nothing to bounce back from, that must become the thing that everyone else bounces off of, alone, solely. It's very interesting to note, and that's why I give Horikoshi a lot of credit with how he's decided to take Midoriya, at least in the way of taking the world and putting Midoriya into it. I've always commented on the fact that I believe Horikoshi writes one of the best worlds in fiction, and I do believe that that is still true. He writes one of the most realistic, most flexible, most human worlds that I've ever seen. And it's mainly for the fact of how real it feels, and I believe that is juxtaposed extremely well against how fake and ingenuine Midoriya feels. I believe that by allowing the two to come closer, as he has, slowly over the course of this arc, is allowing Midoriya to start to reach the point of true character change, the point of true character evolution, because I think for the longest, while his stance on life has changed and while his ability to hold himself has changed, he has not. I believe that Class 1A right now may be knocking on the door of Midoriya's change. I do believe another big important factor for Midoriya's change will be All for One. I believe All for One, at least in this recent arc, has provided something new for Midoriya to tackle. Rather than just facing Shigaraki, a product of this very realistic world, All for One almost stands as Midoriya's opposite, both in character and in function. Not only is he the big bad villain, but he's so evil that it seems almost inhuman, just as Midoriya is so good that it almost seems inhuman. These two characters, when forced into the same world and forced into a world created by one and letting the other fall right into it, it allows for a much more interesting dynamic while changing not a single thing about these individual characters, except how they interact and where they interact. I think that's where Horikoshi has taken the ball and just ran with it. Because it's great how Horikoshi is able to trick people into thinking that he's changed Midoriya's character. All these traits and this ignoring of self-sacrifice, all this determination, all this inhuman sort of madness towards heroism is new. Like, it's changed when it's been there forever. And I think, once again, it's just the cushion has been removed. We're put in a new world where Midoriya's power has risen, but in cost of that power and in cost of his abilities, his ability to recharge that power has faded to the point of nigh on non-existence. Nowhere is safe in the world for Midoriya anymore. Not a single place. Not UA, not out in the open, not at his own home. There's no place for Midoriya to run now because he's chasing All for One. And All for One, he's leading the way towards Midoriya's destruction. I think that is the best way you can keep Midoriya's character, Midoriya's type of character, a character that will not change or will simply avoid changing as hard as they can due to their stubbornness, due to their determination, that is the best way you can make a character stick and make them feel more alive than they really are, by putting them in a situation where their character flaws are simply exacerbated to extreme degrees in a world where they are unable to be the true hero they desire to be the sacrificial martyr that will save everyone, to be the thing that doesn't exist. By putting them in a world where they are not allowed to do that, you inherently make that character feel more real because they are unable to complete what they've been able to complete many a time before. Midoriya was able to defeat Stain. Midoriya was able to defeat Muscular. Midoriya was able to defeat Overhaul. Midoriya was able to defeat almost every single villain he ran into up until this point, through the determination of his character, through his ideology, through the fundamental parts of his character that have stayed unchanged all the way from chapter 1. And I think by making it so that Midoriya's grit, Midoriya's determination, Midoriya's stubbornness must be pushed to the absolute limit, I think that is the best way you can keep it moving. You can keep the character feeling alive and breathing while keeping them in a state that's almost like being dead. It's a very interesting contrast, and you can see it very well with how Midoriya interacts with Class 1A in the latest chapter, chapter 320. By the way the two fight, the two entities, the people who don't have Midoriya's mindset, who do not have Midoriya's power, who do not have Midoriya's understanding, who do not have Midoriya's situation, they're viewing it in a way that Midoriya could never do, because his character simply won't allow that. And due to the fact that he knows the situation, a situation that they also understand, how his character interacts with that situation is always going to make it that he stands in opposition to them. And I think that's very, very interesting. For the longest time, Midoriya's character has fit sort of like an all-purpose key. No matter what situation you plugged it in previously in the narrative, it would solve the problem. No matter how it had to be done, whether it be by Midoriya risking his life, whether it be Midoriya super breaking his fingers, whether it be Midoriya going beyond the limits of One for All and surpassing himself and reaching a new peak of power he had never seen before, Midoriya's key always seemed to fit. But now, he's forcing the same key in the locks that don't work. His character has reached this point. The world has become this new lock that Midoriya simply can't unlock. He's not going to be able to simply open that door. He's going to have to break it down. And while I do 100% believe Midoriya can change, I think what would be more interesting now that we're so deep in and that we're so close to the ending is that he doesn't, and that he loses everything for not being willing to do one thing, which is change. I feel like Horikoshi, sort of in a contrast to the many amazingly developed characters he has made within My Hero Academia, has made the conscious choice to completely disregard all change with his main character. And while I initially did find this a flaw, and it will always hold Midoriya back for me as a character, personally, I believe it'll make the story 10 times more interesting if Horikoshi stays locked on this path. If he keeps this change in scenery and it lasts forever, and we just get to see a man worriedly tear himself apart for something that he could not fix, that'd be wonderful. I greatly appreciate it. And while it wouldn't be as good, to me at least, as some character development, I think, in its own way, it could be all the better. However, those are my thoughts. I think Midoriya hasn't changed, the world has. But what about you? I actually really want to hear it in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with a Pencil, writing off.